This week on football, it's the downfall of Manchester United. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode. It is me, Alex, once again. Thank you for joining me. If you are a first-time viewer, go ahead and subscribe to see me more. If you're already sick of me, then don't. And maybe just wait and see if you like me in a bit. If you want to like the video and you're enjoying it so far, then go ahead and do it. If you want to wait until you start enjoying yourself, there's some really cool bits coming up towards the end and the middle. Wait until then. If you haven't already joined me over on TikTok, I'm at Alex Goalpost. That's on TikTok, and you'll find all of the best bits, all of the debates, the mean things that people are saying to me, which is pretty much the only reason why you'd want to go over there and see that and join in and say some hurtful things, because it's fun for people except me. I've got my team of the week coming up. That's a little bit later in the show. I've also got your weekend treble. That is the way that we win you money, and thank you for listening, I guess. And we are doing that so far, so stay tuned for that. That's at the end of the show. I'm going to be looking into the best player outside of the big six clubs as well, so we'll look at that. But first, as promised, the downfall of Manchester United. I am a Man United fan, for anyone who doesn't know. I am a suffering individual at the moment, and that's fine because Liverpool are going to win their 20th title, and that's okay, and we're dealing with it. But I thought, what better time to look at really what has happened to Man United and the mess that we're in, and also trying to get to the bottom of it and come up with a conclusive answer. And I feel like I have got it, and I think it's really obvious. But here it is. This is the downfall of Manchester United. Manchester United's story begins in 1878 when workers from the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway formed a football club named Newton Heath. The men of the carriage and wagon department at the railway had a dream. That dream was to play football, and that they did. On November 20th, 1880, they competed in their first ever recorded match, playing in the colours of the railway company, green and gold. 2 decades of football across Greater Manchester proved difficult for the railwaymen. In January 1902, growing debts saw the club served with a winding up order. Club captain at the time, Harry Stafford, decided to take matters into his own hands and went out and found 4 businessmen willing to invest their money, with one small catch. The deal was done in April 1902, but Newton Heath were to be renamed. The new name? Manchester United. 1 year later, and enter legendary club figure Ernest Magnell. Magnell had been managing Burnley previously, and he was looking to see where he could take this newly named Manchester United side. 3 years later, Magnell had secured success. He'd secured a promotion for Manchester United into the English First Division, the glory, the epitome, the pinnacle of English football. It only took a couple of years at the highest level, and Manchester United had won their first ever English League title. The 1908 title win for Manchester United was huge. It was massive for the club, but Ernest Magnell had his eye on bigger things. He was ambitious both on and off the pitch, and was the significant influence in the club's move to what we now know as Old Trafford in 1910. Old Trafford saw success almost immediately, with Magnell's side sealing a second league title win in 1911. While the cohesion for the side on the pitch for Manchester United had finally begun, the same could not be said for Europe's political leaders. The world was heading for a dark time. It was the First World War. The subsequent 2 decades were turmoil for the Manchester club. The war saw a halt to football proceedings as the men were shipped out to fight for their queen and their country. Between the conflict and the club's internal financial struggles, Manchester United saw themselves yo-yo between divisions. The club even almost found themselves bankrupt. The conflicts off the field, however, weren't finished, and the rise of a German dictator named Adolf Hitler threw the world back into chaos. Britain were at war again. Following the country's victory over Germany and the Nazi regime, football in England resumed. In 1945, a Scotsman who had played football for both Liverpool and Manchester City was about to begin the most epic of journeys. A man by the name of Matt Busby. United needed a new direction, a new impetus, and above all else, they required inspiration. If they were ever to regain their English League titles, United needed a new leader, and Busby was their man. Busby requested that he be directly involved in training, pick the team on match days, and even choose the players to be bought and sold without interference from the club's directors. Such a level of control over the team was unprecedented in the English game. In 1948, the club won the FA Cup under their new management, but the elusive English First Division title was always out of their grasp. 4 separate seasons passed of Manchester United finishing runners-up before they finally saw the trophy again, more than 40 years after their first title win. In 1952, Busby finally had his title, but his side was ageing. A gradual process began as Busby built his new side, a side of kids. Players aged 16 and 17 were thrown into the deep end. The squad, with an average age of just 22, were given their famous nickname and what we now know fondly as the Busby Babes. Manchester United's ethos of developing youth and giving kids a chance was strengthening. A young Bobby Charlton took his place in the side. They won back-to-back titles, and in 1957 became the first English side to compete in the European Cup. The Busby Babes travelled far and wide, defeating Europe's very best sides. February 6th, 1958, and the boys were jubilant after returning home from a European Cup quarter-final victory against Red Star Belgrade. The plane stopped off in Munich to refuel, but the boys would never return. The plane carrying Manchester United players, officials and journalists crashed while attempting to take off. The Munich air disaster of February 6th, 1958 claimed 23 lives, including those of 8 players. Jeff Bent, Roger Byrne, Eddie Coleman, Duncan Edwards, Mark Jones, David Pegg, Tommy Taylor and Billy Whelan. Busby, with the help of assistant manager Jimmy Murphy, rebuilt the team throughout the 1960s. He signed players such as Dennis Law, Paddy Crerand, and they combined with Bobby Charlton and the next generation of youth players, including George Best. The side won the FA Cup in 1963 and 2 league titles. And in 1968, a miracle, the impossible, happened. Just 10 years on from the tragedy in Munich, Manchester United were European champions. Sir Matt Busby resigned the following year, and a period of unrest and destabilisation at the club even saw United relegated in 1974. Nearly 20 years without a title, and Manchester United needed something drastic. They needed another hero. They needed another Matt Busby. A Scotsman with success at Aberdeen travelled down to Old Trafford to hold talks, and United gave him the reins. Restore us to glory. Alex Ferguson pledged himself to the club and signed in 1986. In 1992, the English First Division rebranded and gave birth to the Premier League. Ferguson was under pressure. His new stricter regime was working, but it wasn't delivering a title. He needed help. He needed a superstar. A Frenchman playing for fierce rivals Leeds United was eventually the target. United signed Eric Cantona in what many considered to be Ferguson's last shot at title glory, and the charismatic striker delivered. Sir Alex followed in the footsteps of club legend Sir Matt Busby, and he gave youth a chance, the class of '92. Ferguson's reign with these players was relentless. For the following 20 years, the club achieved 38 trophies, including 13 Premier League titles and 2 European Cups. In 2013, Sir Alex Ferguson announced his retirement, and United looked to bring in a fellow Scotsman, David Moyes from Everton, to oversee United's continued domination. Lessons had been learned from United's history, and the club, now a superpower in European football, were ready to take the next step. Except they weren't. United's chief exec David Gill also departed, and a new man was tasked with a monumental role at the head of the club. Ed Woodward tried his best, and despite maintaining impressive commercial revenues, The club's dealings in the transfer market let the side down on the pitch, disillusioned, apathetic, and devoid of real ambition. The team was failing, and so were the managers. Managers previously held in extremely high regard within the game could not seem to get United playing. Jose Mourinho and Louis van Gaal were titans of the game, but even they couldn't get United playing. United tried fresh faces, relative newcomers to management, in hopes to change fortunes. Club legend Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Dutchman Erik ten Hag tried their best, but truly couldn't succeed. The club spent billions and nothing was working. Why? Let's rewind a second. The year is 2003. Enter Malcolm Glazer and the Glazer family, an American family of sports team owners and fat, greedy businessmen. A family tasked within by only their lust for cash and power. A parasitic ownership funded by high interest loans and a financial method to suck the blood of a once great football club. The Glazers borrowed exorbitant amounts of money to purchase the club, with the knowledge their loans would accrue gargantuan amounts of interest, of which they never intended to pay off. They knew the commercial attraction of a club like Manchester United could stack their pockets using dividends and allow them to continue their fat, greedy American lifestyle. The Glazer takeover was achieved by acquiring loans in excess of £600 million, borrowed against the club to secure their ownership. That debt of £604 million has now accrued £834 million in interest already paid by the club, with a remaining debt of £731 million still outstanding, all the while accruing its own interest as we speak. Whilst the club was able to sustain success on the pitch for over 10 years following the takeover, the club was destabilising in the background. Sir Alex kept the team together and managed his resources. Chief exec David Gill oversaw the club's spending, and he and Sir Alex made sure only the best mindsets and standards bred throughout the club. Following their departure, the club spent billions in player transfers. Manchester United overpaid and undersold and attempted overnight success while neglecting the lifeblood of the club: the fans, the staff, and the city. United became toxic, and drastic change was once again needed. United felt that if they could change their face, they could deceive the fans into thinking the club was once again in the hands of the right people. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos entered, but things continued to get worse. On the pitch, it's now worse than ever, and tensions between supporters and those in charge of the club are at an all-time high. Penny pinching from ground level staff, mass redundancies, increases in ticket prices, and general disconnection between the club and its soul has left Manchester United languishing around the bottom of the Premier League. Manchester United were on top of the world and debt-free in 2003. And so the hardest question in the footballing world, and the most obvious answer possible, is staring us right in the face. How do we fix Manchester United? Well, there you go. Man United, once a juggernaut of European football, now, like I said, languishing at the bottom of the Premier League, with things taking worse turn after worse turn. I didn't even know it's possible that there were worse turns. You think it's going to get better, and then it gets worse. And I think there's a real, genuine possibility that Man United get relegated next season. I'm not even joking. I mean, I'm hoping we turn around, of course, but if we go into next season in the same form, with the same attitude as these players do currently under Ruben Amorim, there will be teams who will be better equipped to stay in the Premier League next season. You've got Burnley, who could get promoted, who defend better than us. You've got Leeds, who attack better than us. You've got teams that have got actual better quality on the pitch than us. Current teams, I watched that Everton game at the weekend, all over the pitch, better quality, better final passes, better in the final third as well. It's unbelievable that you're saying about Man United. It really is. Let's move on. At the start of the show, I said that I wanted to know who was the best player outside of the big six clubs. That's the big six clubs in the Premier League. And I think I've got someone. So I'll ask you the question. Is Jarrod Bowen the best player outside of the big six? That's the top six clubs. That's Man United, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Spurs. I think he is, genuinely. I can't think of another player who could fit in to every other side. So Jarrod Bowen, if you put him into any of those sides, he gets into Tottenham's side, he gets into Liverpool's side, whether he plays up front or on the left, he gets into Man United's side, he gets into Chelsea, 100%. He gets into Arsenal. If Saka's not playing, if Saka's playing, he'd play through the middle. There's not a side that he doesn't get into. And I think Jarrod Bowen has gone maybe under the radar as a potential big move. I don't know why. I don't actually know why Jarrod Bowen's never been highlighted as a player to pick up from any of these big clubs, but he's doing the business at West Ham and he'll go down as a West Ham legend regardless of what happens in his career. So yeah, big fan of his. I think he's got real quality. He's got loads of pace. I just love when a player is a forward player who's relied upon to score goals, when you can give him the ball and just trust him with it. He just doesn't lose the ball. You give him the ball, he can get out of tight situations. He drives with it. He makes intelligent runs. He makes intelligent passes. He just has elite quality. And it's a shame, really, that he's not gone on to a giant club and maybe played in the Champions League and put himself on the world stage, because he deserves it, because he's got the quality. I came up with a list of 6 players who I think could be the best player outside of the top 6 teams, and tell me what you think. First one is Brentford's Bryan Mbeumo. I've got Morgan Gibbs-White at Nottingham Forest. I've got Mateus Cunha at Wolves. I've got Villa's Ollie Watkins, Newcastle's Alexander Isak, or Brighton's Caro Matoma. Do you think any of these players are better than Jarrod Bowen, or do you think Jarrod Bowen is the best player outside of the top 6? Let me know what you think. Right, let's do a very brief team of the week, and I mean brief. In goal, Mark Flecken. Mark Flecken, every time I watch Brentford play, he just has the game of his life. He's a brilliant goalkeeper, makes great saves all the time, and just feels very solid. Right back, I've gone for Ryan Gravenberch, and I know that sounds ridiculous because he's not a right back, but he might as well have played there at the weekend. I thought he was fantastic against Man City. He did half of Trent's work, and I thought, yeah, always does the hard yards. Very, very disciplined, but a great footballer on the ball, give him the ball at tight situations, love him. Centre-back, Ibrahima Konate. I think it was ridiculous. That game against Man City was absolutely ridiculous. Konate, if it wasn't for Konate, Trent Alexander-Arnold would have had an all-timer, and he's gotten out of it somehow because Mo Salah has scored and Szoboszlai got on the end of one. But if that hadn't happened and City had nicked one, or Jeremy Doku could cross, it would have been laughed about for years to come. He is the first player to be dribbled past more than 10 times in one Premier League match since 2015-16. And I don't want to pile on Trent Alexander-Arnold, but when you see a player just absolutely rip another player apart, it was different leagues, genuinely. I know Trent is unbelievable on the ball, but in terms of a defender versus an attacker, Jeremy Doku made him look silly. He made him look like he was in the Championship and he was in the Champions League. It was that vast a difference. The disparity between the two was huge, and if Jeremy Doku could cross and could find a teammate, City could have won 6-2. Like, it could have been that bad. It was ridiculous. I don't know. Trent's gotten away with one there for me. Alongside Konate, I've gone for Van Dijk. Just an absolute colossus, just a giant of a centre-back. And yeah, I thought Liverpool were fantastic defensively. They were so impressive against City. And I think that probably has gone under the radar, because City, people will probably say in that game City didn't play well, or maybe Liverpool didn't play well because there wasn't loads of attacking, but City were relentless. They were trying to break Liverpool down, but they couldn't, and that was in part and probably largely down to, I thought, brilliant midfield, but their centre-backs were brilliant. Left back, Patrick Dorgu. I actually feel sorry for this kid because I think he's good, and we know what happens to good players when they come to Man United. I think he has got potential, and I'm not going to get carried away with myself because he's young and there's just a massively toxic environment that he's just come into. But what I like from Dorgu is he makes a front foot pass. So as soon as he gets on the ball, he's zipping it forward. He's trying to get it into players in midfield. He's trying to push play forward. He's not trying to sit back and pass between the centre backs. He looks progressive, and I like that. He's got loads of pace, and he doesn't mind getting into the box and getting back at the same time. You're not looking around going, where's Dorgu? He's too far up the field. He always gets back as well. He looks like a real athlete, and he looks like he's got quality as well when he gets up there. I think if United were in a better place, I think he would be a really great signing. And we'll see. He might be a great signing anyway, but we'll see. Central midfield, I've gone for Morgan Rogers. Morgan Rogers is Moussa Dembele with end product. I think he's that good of a dribbler. Look, Moussa Dembele was an all-timer in terms of his dribbling, but the thing that always frustrated us about Moussa Dembele is he didn't have that end product. I think Morgan Rogers has got that and then some. I think he's got end product. He can score goals. He can make goals as well. He can get in behind. But he feels like you give him the ball in tight situations. He'll drive with the ball. He's one of the best ball carriers, I think, in top level football at the moment. I think he's brilliant. Alongside him, Mikael Damsgaard got his 10th assist at the weekend, and I think I've already talked about him already this season a couple of times. But if you haven't heard me talk about him, I think he's one of the best in terms of best improved players in the league. I think he's the most improved midfielder in the league, because last season he came across after the Euros, and I think he had a really good Euros and then spent a couple of seasons and then got into the Brentford side, and it was like you expected a lot from him. He's still young. He's still like 24, I think. But this is the season where you see real quality for him. There was a great stat that I think only Cole Palmer has attempted more through balls this season than Mikael Damsgaard. And that's amazing, because it means that Thomas Frank's side is front-footed. They don't mind giving him the license to make mistakes and potentially get the forward balls through or not. And they will suffer for it because they've conceded a lot of goals this season. But having a player like Mikael Damsgaard who's got that quality, who can make those incisive passes and isn't afraid to take risks, I think is brilliant. Thomas Frank obviously believes in him, and that is showing on the pitch at the moment, 100% for Mikael Damsgaard. Alongside him, finishing off that midfield, Bruno Fernandes. 5 years of Bruno Fernandes, and I feel like we owe him. I feel like Man United owe Bruno Fernandes. And the time has gone really quickly, actually. But since Bruno Fernandes has come in, he's actually got 89 goals and 78 assists in just 271 games for Man United. And what have we got to show for it? I know we've won a Carabao Cup, and I know we've won an FA Cup, and Bruno's been at the heart of it. But I feel like his quality is owed a league title. And it's disappointing that the players around him can't see him as an example and get up to his level, because I think for season after season, Bruno Fernandes just isn't letting United down. And it's a shame. It's a real shame. Right wing, Brian Mbeumo, spoke about him, obviously, as one of the best players, I think, outside of the top six. He is ready for a big move, 100%. He's got 15 goals and 4 assists in the league this season. I think he could play for any of the big six clubs as well. Left wing, Callum Hudson-Odoi. I really like Callum Hudson-Odoi. I think that goal against Newcastle, that's a proper goal. That's a goal out of nothing. And I love it when a winger can do that. Step inside and just blast one into the far corner out of nowhere. If he's not injured, Callum Hudson-Odoi is a really good player. And I think he's got potential. And I said at the start of the season, I expected a big season from him. I think he's been brilliant. I think Forest have been brilliant. But I did say at the start of the season, I expected big things. And if he can sort out those little niggly injuries that just keep him out for a couple of weeks and kill his momentum, I think he's a top winger. Striker, finishing off, and I'm saying he's a striker, Mo Salah. Because he plays as a striker. I know he holds his width and he stays out wide and whatever, but he is Liverpool's focal point. He's Liverpool's goal scorer, and he's the furthest player up the pitch every single time Liverpool attack. So to me, that's a striker. You're just playing a little bit further right. That's how I look at it. And Sturridge was right, actually, in the post-match on Super Sunday. He was talking about how we talk about right wingers and left wingers and say, wow, look at the numbers they're getting. They're like striker level numbers. They are strikers. They are strikers these days. And just because their position doesn't say it, and just because they hold a bit more width, and that's how we tactically set them up these days, it doesn't mean that they aren't the main goal getters. They aren't the ones tasked with the job of getting goals. So that's a striker for me. But yeah, Mo Salah, unbelievable. unbelievable the amount of returns he gets. Unbelievable how he steps up in every single big game and puts in performances, grabs a goal, is a match winner. And, you know, it's one of those things. It's almost like, and I've said it for Haaland as well, for a couple of years, it becomes boring. You know a player is too good when it's just boring. It's boring when I see Salah score. It's boring when I see Haaland score. And that's me being a hater, but it's also me appreciating that they are that good. They've taken that next step. So yeah, Mo Salah. Unreal. Right, let's finish off with my weekend treble. I'm not going to do the day one fantasy teams this week, only because there's midweek fixtures and we won't be able to get that in by the time you see this episode. Last week's weekend treble missed by a goal, and it's a killer because I went for Plymouth versus Cardiff over 2.5 goals and Everton versus Man United over 1.5 goals. I should have switched them around. I didn't, and then I also went for Tottenham or draw, which was obvious. I should have really gone for Tottenham to win and maybe Plymouth and Cardiff over 1.5 goals. I don't know. But we go again, and we're still in profit. We're £48 up. This week's selections, Frankfurt versus Leverkusen. That's over 2.5 goals in that game. Second selection, Napoli versus Inter. Massive game in Serie A for the title. Over 1.5 goals in that game. And then third selection is Betis. That's Antony-less Betis since his red card against Real Madrid. Both teams to score. £10 on, get you £31.20 back. Stick with me this season. I will be back with you next week, next Wednesday, and every Wednesday until the end of the season. Thanks once again. Have a great week.